Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and now you can hear me saying that you are lucky enough to be here for the June 2015 Worldox Virtual User Group meeting, where in an unprecedented move, we are not going to show you anything to do with Worldox. We're going to talk about it. We talked about Worldox GX4 last month, and this month we're going to talk about the things you need to consider before you update to GX4. And so rather than have screenshots to show you things, because we did that last month, here we're going to talk about what we need to think about. And so we don't want people to say, well, what's that and what's that, and have their focus diverted away from the important things you need to think about. So before we do that, we're going to do a little housekeeping here. We're just going to talk very briefly about the fact that this is the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar control panel, and if you are still seeing it on your screen, it's because you have not pressed this button that looks like an arrow pointing to the right, because that would have caused it to slide right off the right side of your screen and disappear. Clicking that button causes that to happen and causes this button then to turn into one that looks more like a left pointing arrow, because these buttons then are the only thing you can still see, including the left pointing arrow, and clicking the left pointing arrow will bring this back onto your screen, because if you're shy and you have a question, you will type it here, you will remember to hit send, and Leanne, our humble moderator, will interrupt Mary Jo or myself at the exact opportune moment and will ask your question on your behalf. Now, Mary Jo doesn't do it quite as much as me, but we sometimes get off track, we sometimes ramble, or perhaps we're just not answering the question that you intended, or perhaps you just have some follow-up questions based on some things we've said. Just keep typing those follow-up questions and those nudges right here. Keep remembering to hit send, and Leanne will continue to keep us on track and make sure that you get your question answered. Now, if you're feeling bold, click this button here that looks like a hand with an arrow pointing upwards. That means raise your hand. Leanne will do the same thing. She'll recognize that you have a question. She'll interrupt me or Mary Jo at just the right time, but she will then unmute your microphone so you can ask your own question. That microphone will remain unmuted until we are done answering your question. So if you have follow-up questions or if you want to keep us on track, just keep talking, because we are still talking to you and you are still talking to us. So, without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Mary Jo, who's going to start us off and tell us some of the things that are specific to GX4 to consider with the update.
Okay, the first thing that is already technically in place, but I want to remind everybody with GX4 upgrades, is that Worldox no longer supports Windows XP. Microsoft doesn't support Windows XP, and neither does Worldox now. So that is out the window. If you have any machines with XP on it, no longer supporting Worldox.
You say it's already there. Does that mean that GX3 doesn't support XP
I am not sure if GX3, but Worldox does not support. It says they've dropped that a while back.
Okay, so I think
Worldox
what that means is if you're on the very latest GX3 going to GX4, you're probably all right, but we may have people coming from GX2 or GX itself, and that's going to be something, if you've got that old version of GX or of Worldox, you might have that old version of Windows.
Yep. And along those same lines, as far as things that aren't supported, if you're going to Worldox GX4, Microsoft Office 2007 will be supported, but anything before that will not. So if you have 2003, I don't know if anybody's got any older than that, but if you do, if you do, then you really need to upgrade. But if you do have 2003, that will no longer be supported. But 2007
I do still see 2003 out there a little bit.
I do too.
Now, I think it's important to mention right now then that also they still do not have support for Office 64-bit. So you need a 32-bit version of Office 2007 or up. If you have 64-bit Office, you're still out of luck. Now, of course, we're talking about upgrading, so if you're running Worldox now, you probably don't have 64-bit Office, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
And then the oldest version of WordPerfect that will be supported is X4, which is 14. So that's going to be the oldest version. So if you have anything prior to WordPerfect 14, you need to upgrade WordPerfect as well. And then finally, there is no support for GroupWise or Lotus Notes. So if anybody is using GroupWise for their emails, you would have to consider updating that as well. There will be no support for that with Worldox GX4.
Now, at the same time, some of you may be using Web Mobile. Web Mobile is a way to get to your Worldox document store from an iPad, from a website, from a phone in certain instances. Worldox GX3 uses something called Worldox Web Mobile. Worldox GX4 will use Worldox Web Mobile 2.0. You can't interchange them, so you can't install Worldox Web Mobile 2.0 before you switch to GX4, and you can't switch to GX4 without breaking that connection to Web Mobile and having to update Worldox Web Mobile 2.0. So you need to get to the latest version of Web Mobile 2.0 and GX4 at the same time. You can't do one before the other. Obviously, chicken and egg, one has to be done before the other, but they're both going to be down while this is happening.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that is new that is coming out that is not available is the style sheets. And you're probably going, what is a style sheet? Well, styles were something that you could update in Worldox when you were changing, let's say, column formats and sorts and things like that. And then you would save the style that you had had set up, and that would save it every time you come in. That's going to be done away with, and they'll be replacing it with something new.
Yeah, they have a new way of communicating that to Worldox. One that Mary Jo and I think is much more intuitive and easier, and that's why Mary Jo says, if you even know what styles are, because usually what would happen is people would call us and say, well, I want this, and we'd say, okay, well, we'll go create a style, and we would do it. Nowadays, with the new way of doing things, it's a lot more intuitive, and a user can actually do it for themselves. Did you mention GroupWise and Lotus Notes?
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
I must have been worrying about my chair falling apart when that happened. We got Web Mobile.
Outlook, drag and drop.
We're going down the list.
And we have a list. We're prepared.
Yeah, we have a list. Okay. The new version of GX4 automatically creates your Outlook drag and drop folders. These are the folders in Outlook that you can automatically profile things to and use to pull up lists of documents. If you've created those in the past, GX3 and I think GX2, maybe it was introduced in GX3, but GX3 at least supported these folders, but you had to create them. Now they are created for you automatically, so the minute you start saving a document, or the minute you save your first document to a certain matter, bam, there's a folder in Outlook so that you can instantly drag and drop as many emails as you want to that matter automatically. It's automatically created for you. The problem that you need to consider, the thing you need to consider is that you may then end up with duplicates. If you created one for the Jones matter and then Worldox comes in when you get GX4 in and creates one for you automatically, it's not able to match those two up and say, oh, I'm replacing this with that. You're going to end up with a duplicate, and all you need to do is delete it. But be aware you will have duplicates, and end users are going to need to know about that before they get into their Outlook and find them and freak out. Okay, Mary Jo. Oh, I get to do this one too.
The next two you can do.
The next two, and that's older favorites. Some of your older favorites. Now, favorites takes on a new meaning in GX4. It's much more intuitive. You have the ability to make something a favorite and make it stick as a favorite. In the old days, there was a certain number of things, a certain number of documents, a certain number of Adobe files, a certain number of spreadsheets, a certain number of matters that were your favorites. And it was sometimes a very mystical thing. There was a man behind a curtain that was controlling what was a favorite and what wasn't. So some of your older favorites may disappear with GX4. Be aware of that. So something that may have shown up as a favorite just because GX4 considered it to be a favorite, or GX3 considered it to be a favorite, now GX4 may not. And so you may need to simply go in and manually make that a favorite. But again, it's not something that's going to stop you from working. It's not a problem that's insurmountable. Just be aware that if something disappears, it's because of differences in the way GX4 and GX3 look at favorites. And I'm going to take the next one because I'm big on Boolean search. Boolean search is the same. Now, if you don't know what Boolean search is, then you don't care, A. And if you don't and you're curious, we did a webinar, or I think we did a virtual user group meeting about it, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And at the end of this virtual user group meeting, I'm going to show you how to navigate our website and search for old content, old videos. So we'll look for that. But it's the ability to string things together. I want the word pumpernickel and the word a street, if I'm looking for an easement that was written specific to property on Pumpernickel Street. Or maybe I want it within 10 words of street. Or maybe I want Pumpernickel or street. Or maybe I want Pumpernickel and not street. Those words used to be what separated, served as these Boolean operators. So if I wanted pumpernickel and street, I would type pumpernickel space AND space street. Now that and has been replaced by the ampersand. The or has been replaced by what's called a piping symbol. It's a shifted backslash. In case you're wondering what a piping symbol, it's that straight up and down line. And the not has been replaced by an exclamation point. So the logic, the ability to search this way, everything that you've learned about how to do Boolean search remains the same, but the operators are going to be different. And so now if you were to type pumpernickel and street, it would be looking for those 3 words, including the word and.
If you're coming from an older version, GX2 to GX4, you just have to be aware that in GX3, libraries turned into categories. And so libraries were gone, although they were replaced with categories. So we may be having some firms here that are still on GX2, GX2. Sometimes we have firms that are on older versions than that of Worldox, and they're coming up to GX4. So just be aware there's a little different terminology there that we're going to be using, and libraries are now categories. And there's a little bit of things that we want to be aware of with that. Time. The biggest thing to consider here is the timing that it's going to take to do this. If you have a large database, one of the things that we have to do, one of the steps is we have to run a complete init and build of your indexer. So we have to go through all the profile groups and your text, and we have to run that. If that's a large database, that could take a long time, so that would be something we'd want to be looking at, and we'd want to consider as to when we schedule your update so that we have enough time to do it, whether it's on a weekend or a weeknight or something, because we don't want to interrupt the day too long in building that. So that's to be considered. And then also the last thing I have is training. We're going to want to have some time that you're going to want to set aside for training in the new GX4 so that users can be aware and jump in of all the new changes and the looks and where you go to get things.
Yeah, it's not like going from GX2 to GX3 where some things changed, but it looked and operated pretty much the same. Things have really changed quite a bit here. Things that we think are intuitive and we think people will pick up on very nicely and very quickly, but you really want to give some people a chance to experience it and be trained on it before they get dumped into it. So do consider that. And I have 2 more things. The indexer requirements have probably changed, and you also want to consider the amount of space on your indexer. That's one of the indexer requirements. If you have had Worldox for a long time, it's very possible that you're still using the same indexer machine, simply because that machine doesn't really tend to need more power or more CPU as you go. You picked one that served your needs when you started, and it's still serving your needs. When we get GX4 in place, that may not be true. You may need to upgrade your indexer. You may need to add some memory. You may need to add CPUs. You may need to just take another machine that's been phased out as being a server and turn it into the indexer. You may need to consider that. So consider your indexer requirements and the amount of space that you need. The last time, the worst time to think about the indexer requirements is after we've moved you to GX4 and started up your indexer and started to do the rebuild, and we find that we don't have enough space or that it's taking even longer with the new algorithms. And finally, I said we weren't going to look at anything. I think it bears consideration that this thing that nobody knows what it's supposed to be has gone away, and there is a new Dropbox that looks at least like it belongs to Worldox. I believe it has a W in it. It's green, like the green and white W down in your icon. It looks like it belongs with Worldox. So if you're used to using the Dropbox, but you've spent years explaining to people that you have no idea what that thing is supposed to be,
it's not a Rubik's Cube.
It's not a Rubik's Cube. Exactly. You may be happy. You may be sad to know that this awful-looking icon is going away. And I think it warrants mentioning that the whole look and feel of Worldox is not just more intuitive, it's much fresher. Granted, some of us may be older than others, and so we don't really notice how dated Worldox has become over the years. At the first annual Worldox conference that was held last fall, I believe, in Arizona, and fall in Arizona is hot. The developer, the original developer of Worldox, Fred, said that he would beat anybody away with his cane if they tried to change his icons, but he must not have won that battle because the icons, including this thing, now look quite a bit newer. And so that's it. That is Worldox GX4 and what you need to consider, not what it looks like. Remember, that was last month. And in a minute, I'll show you how to get to last month if you're curious about what Worldox GX4 looks like. But that's what you need to consider if you're going to move to it. If you have it and you want it, let us know. If you have GX3, GX2, GX anything, and you're entitled to the upgrade, as long as you're on maintenance, you're entitled to the upgrade. Or even if you're not on maintenance, but you want to pay for the upgrade, let us know. The very first thing we need to do is request it. They are saying that they're going to start shipping them to current customers at the end of June. And it is the end of June. Tomorrow is the last day. So if they hold true to that, they will start shipping them out. Now, people have been requesting them for a couple months now. So if you want to get on that list and hold your place in that list, just send an email to me, paul.purdue, like the school, not the chicken. And for those of you who are not from Indiana, that's P-U-R-D-U-E, paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. And I will emphasize that web address when I go out here and get to a browser and show you that our website, which is, again, Attorney Computer Systems, notice the emphasis on the last S, attorneycomputersystems.com. If you go here and click on videos, you will see all of our video groups. We have 3 different virtual user group meetings, tabs 3 and Practice Master, plus the one you're attending now, Worldox. We have our Coffee Pot webinars that I give each month, and our eBytes video series. Mary Jo records 3 of these a month, one for tabs, one for Practice Master, one for Worldox. And we have the Paul and Mary Jo show where we go into interesting concepts. I recorded one last month about GX4 that'll show up sometime over the next month or so. All of these things are available to you. And if you click on, for instance, the Worldox Virtual User Group meeting, you will be taken to a page that describes that meeting and then shows you what's coming up. The July one will be on the 27th. And we are going to talk about Quick Save in GX4, a brand new feature in GX4 that lets you save a document quickly without even profiling. And Mary Jo is going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about the new Outlook integration that we kind of alluded to today, at least parts of it. We're going to talk about the whole concept. That will be next month. And you will find that next virtual user group meeting here along with a link to sign up. And as you scroll down, you will see the recorded content and videos for the prior. This is the one we're attending right now. If you're attending this live, then this is currently in post-production because we haven't finished recording it yet. And as we scroll down even further, we'll see recorded versions of the prior meetings. And we have been doing these for a long time, and we've been recording them for a long time. So there's a lot of valuable content out there. We do have one rule. You're not allowed to watch these past 2 a.m. because if you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning watching our videos, you may have a problem. Everybody have a good rest of the day, good rest of the afternoon and month, and we will see you next month when we talk about Quick Save and the new Outlook integration. Thanks much. Bye-bye.